Is this it for the next 20 years? And you might be questioning if you're just wasting your potential. And I'm reading this at the same time, I'm thinking, wow, it sounds very true for dating and marriages and relationships also. You're in a long term relationship and you're maybe wondering, is this it for the next 20 years? And are you wasting your potential because maybe something better is out there? So it's an interesting question to start asking. And I think the fact that this question is coming up is testament that you've gotten somewhere. It is very much a successful person's problem. It's very much a first world problem. Let's just be honest about that. But that doesn't mean that we're being ungrateful for what we've got and what we've achieved so far. And yes, we're grateful, but at the same time, it's time to ask the bigger questions because we have the luxury to ask these questions. We are no longer in survival mode. For us, roti kapda makan is kind of taken care of. So, of course, we're going to ask ourselves the higher level questions. And the thing is that these higher level questions show up as these smaller questions in different areas of your life where it kind of feels like maybe I can do something about it, because confronting the big life questions can be quite difficult and confronting and triggering. So it could look like this, like the mid career, midlife crisis looks like this, where you start to wake up in the middle of the night, or you're walking in the morning, or on a Sunday. These are the questions. Maybe I should switch companies. Maybe I should try my hand at something different. Or you might, and then the thought might come that maybe I don't have the right skills. So you might think of, okay, let me sign up for this program, or should I explore a second MBA, or should I explore a PhD program? And then when all of this kind of feels too much, or maybe your job is just too demanding, you don't have the mind space, then you think about taking a sabbatical. And then in the sabbatical, maybe you can figure out what you want to do, or if you want to start something, because then again, you can always come back. So these are not surface questions, they are deeper questions. And as somebody who's a student of spirituality, I can tell you that we are meant to have the midlife crisis. It's the reason why everyone has it, because the first half of our lives, we are meant to be learning the lessons. And then the second half, or the phase two of our lives, is where we kind of are like Neo. We are being given the red pill and we are being asked to wake up, and we are asked to ask the higher questions and start doing the things that we needed to do as a soul when we incarnated over here. So even if these views seem very far out for you and it's not your jam, that's okay, leave it. But if this is a problem that you are starting to ask these questions, then stick around and see what lines with you. So it'll also show up as energy inside your body, where there is restlessness. There are these ideas that keep coming. Maybe there's an idea that's kind of starting to hit you over and over again. It's like a gentle knock. Or there's a sense that you're built for something bigger. This is not it. And it becomes like a nagging feeling that you're getting, because you know, while everyone else outside is looking at your LinkedIn bio and going like, great job done, you're amazing, you know that there is a gap between where you are currently and where you're capable of. And that is the pain of wasted potential regret, right? That is the pain of feeling like you're not living up to your full potential. So it's not your fault. We were all sold this one lie that you remember back in the day when you were making career choices. It was all about choosing the right career, choosing the right company, or choosing the right track. Because if you chose the right track, then you could just be like, okay, I'm going to work hard and my potential will naturally emerge. And that was kind of the plan. that if you made these choices, you married the right person, you got the right kind of placement, your life would be largely sorted. Now we're kind of, yes, it did get sorted in many ways, and now it's time to ask bigger questions. And but here's the thing that's keeping you stuck. Nobody taught us how to activate our potential. What does it really take to live up to our potential? For us, it was like getting the marks, getting the promotion, getting the external markers of success. But that's not really potential, right? Because if that were true, you wouldn't be asking yourself the bigger questions. You wouldn't be thinking about this gap between where you are currently and what your potential is. So I want to talk about these five levers, or rather, I've combined two and made it one, which is psychological safety. There is inner safety. There is creative genius, which is your zone of genius. And finally, spiritual alignment, or just alignment with the lifestyle that you want, what things that you care about, your values, and what you feel your purpose is. Because all of the experiences that you have in the first half of your life is what gives you meaning. The reason I'm doing this work right now is because I struggled and I overcame. And that's what those experiences, those obstacles, is what gives meaning to this business. Otherwise, it would be just another thing to do, right? Another box to check, but it's not. So it's really about aligning with your soul's calling. So, and when these three or four ingredients that I just talked about, which is safety, alignment, your zone of genius, when these go missing, that's when you come to this privileged problem where you feel, I'm climbing the ladder, but you're like, maybe the ladder isn't pointing in the right building, or maybe I'm just climbing the wrong mountain, or you're feeling like you've achieved everything you've set out to do, but somehow it's not really adding up. There's something missing. And again, like I said, it's a good problem to have, not an easy one, but it's definitely testament that you've done a few things, and that's why you have the luxury to have this privileged problem. Okay, so let's talk about the five levers to unlock your potential. This is through my work that I have done over the last 3 years with dozens of people. I have come to the realization that it's these five things which act like five levers. And as you start pulling each one of them, you start to ascend higher and higher in terms of how much how much creative self-expression you have, how wealthy you get to be, how open you become to abundance, and how open you become to fulfillment and service and all of the nice stuff that money can't buy. Okay, so let's talk about the five levers now. The first one is psychological safety. Now, look, early on in my career, many times I have found myself in situations where I'm like, maybe I'm just too sensitive, or everyone else can cope with it. There must be something wrong, or I should at least try to clock in 1 year in this job because how will it look on my CV? Now, I did not grow up in an environment which was emotionally safe. So I had all of the physical comforts. I had a great childhood on paper, but at the same time, I didn't know what emotional safety looks like. And because of that, I was kind of okay with a lot of stuff that was happening around me, which was not okay. And this I feel is true, not for our culture in general. Most of us have not been brought up in emotionally safe environments. We don't know what safety looks like. And that's why when somebody tries to bully us, when somebody tries to micromanage us, when somebody tries to put us down or betrays us, even though we know that we can't trust this person or we don't feel safe around this person, we force ourselves to stay in those situations because how can we not? That's what we tell ourselves. There's, and yes, this, it's a perception game, yes, where maybe in a work environment, some people will be able to cope with it. Some people might even thrive in it, but you may be someone who's not thriving in this. And that brings me to this very important point where toxicity is actually subjective. What do I mean by that? Not everyone is allergic to peanuts, right? And banana is a great fruit. But if banana gives me a stomach cramp, it's toxic for my system. So really, it has nothing to do with how others are perceiving it. There's only one truth when it comes to psychological safety, and that's sitting in your body. Your body will let you know that you're not feeling safe. So if there's a tightness in your chest, or that feeling in your gut, or you dread your calls from your manager or skip level, that's a sign you're not feeling safe. Your body is not feeling safe. You're not supposed to be here. So the only and only the right thing for you to do is to walk away from this situation and not make it mean anything about yourself. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're oversensitive. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that whatever your emotional, psychological, physical makeup is, your nervous system can't take this, and you're better off walking away. Because if you don't, what happens is that your body keeps the score. Your nervous system has these memories. So even the next job that you get, which is might be better, and you might have safe people, and you might have great people and a great culture, but a part of you is still going to feel anxious around all of it, because you're just so you that it's no longer a normal default for you. Your normal default is walking on eggshells and feeling anxious for your one-on-ones. So that's what you're going to feel, and then you start, and others kind of pick up on those energetic signals, and then you recreate patterns that have happened in the past. And then it's a lot like relationships. Like on the third relationship, you understand what patterns are, or you understand when you've come out of a toxic relationship and now you're in a healthy relationship, but somehow the ghost of that toxicity hasn't gone away. That's the impact of you not being able to protect yourself. And guess what? When we're talking about unlocking your full potential, it's not going to happen in a toxic environment. It's really not going to happen. So, however nice it looks on LinkedIn, you got to cut this cord and you got to move on, because your potential is so much greater, so much greater, even though you may not believe it right now. Okay. That second, I want to talk about inner safety, and I don't think gets talked about enough. Like we know it as boundaries, and we know it as confidence, and we know it as grit and resilience and courage. What I have understood with all of the deep inner work that I have done, and I have done a lot of inner child work, I understood one thing, that it's really that confidence that you see in other people, or the courage that you recognize in other people, it has nothing to do with them being more brave, really. It just means that they have more psychological safety within them. They trust themselves better. They are most probably more kinder to themselves. And they are feeling a lot more safe in this environment. And that is why they are so much more confident in this situation. Because nobody is confident across the board, across all situations. That's just how it is. So if you're finding, and you would have noticed it yourself, like there are some situations where you're like this complete chatterbox, you're open and you're sharing things and you're talking about things, but then there is some work situation or with a specific person at work, you just kind of clam down and you don't want to say anything, you want to stay protective, your body language changes, you have things to say but you don't want to say them. Those are all signs that you're not feeling safe. And yes, it has something to do with the environment. I just talked about it. But I think I have come to understand that it has a lot more to do with your childhood and how you were brought up. And and it has nothing to do with how great our parents were. All our parents did the best job. They knew how to do given the situation, resources, experiences that they had. But we all carry some of these common unconscious rules, like you got to be useful, live for other people, shine but don't outshine others, be perfect, like don't demand too much, don't ask for too much, obey authority, respect people who are older. Like these were all contextual and it made a lot of sense maybe in the context of our childhoods. But the fact is that we've carried them over into adulthood. And unless we go back and we look at, okay, what were these unconscious rules of childhood that we are still living by, and we shift them consciously, and we start coming toward inward for safety instead of checking out with numbing behaviors, we continue to create these kind of patterns. And this looks like things like you finding it hard to meet deadlines because you're a perfectionist. You finding it hard to ask for support or delegate stuff to to your team because you didn't feel as supported. You didn't, like, mom and dad were maybe busy and you didn't think you could get your needs met. So you just learned to stop asking for your needs. And because you learned to stop asking for your needs, it doesn't feel safe. You've continued to not ask for your needs. You've continued to not ask for support. And that's how these things show up. Or maybe you got a great recognition, a lot of people are talking about you, but you're like, okay, this doesn't feel safe for me right now. So you kind of start deflecting the compliments. Oh, no, it wasn't me, it was all this team, and I didn't do as much. Like these are all ways of us playing small. And when I say small, I literally mean small, because that's like the child part of you which is showing up in that situation, and you're reacting, or you're responding the situation based on whatever you learned in your childhood. So when you heal these stories is where you start tapping into your inherent confidence, your authenticity, your courage, your resilience, your grit. All of that comes from this one place which I call inner safety. I was able to access it with inner child work, and my clients see amazing results. If this is something that you feel called to explore, definitely DM me and we should talk. Let's move on to the third one, which is zone of genius. Um, so I don't know about you, but I, for the longest time, subscribed to this idea of success comes from struggle. It's only worth it if you worked hard for it. Um, and what that did to me is I would consciously pick up more challenging roles, more steep learning curves, or step out of my comfort zone, to the extent that I'm picking up roles where it's not aligning with my natural strengths. It's not who I am at all. And I am asking myself and expecting myself to excel in these roles. And then I'm wondering, why am I not succeeding, or why am I feeling behind? Why am I not being promoted? Well, because I didn't set myself up for success, I set myself up for failure. And because you have this belief around hard work and struggle, when you do come across your strengths, like for me it was storytelling, or it was empathy, active listening, active reading, like these were all great strengths that I had, I would kind of think you tend to dismiss them, and you're like, okay, fine, everyone can do it maybe. No, not everyone can do it. It is a sign of your genius, your strengths, and the more you double down on that, that's how you get the competitive edge, right? Otherwise you're always going to be hustling to be competent or excellent at your work. How are you going to be a genius? The only way you're going to be a genius and really unlock your full potential is when you start operating in your zone of genius. And it's only when it's kind of the same thing as Maslow hierarchy, right? Like when you've hit the basics, when you're in a role where it just comes easily to you, it feels like play. Now is when you can start asking yourself, okay, what's the next skill that I should pick up, or the next experience I need to get better at this, or what is a weakness that I need to address, which is kind of constraining me from really doubling down on my genius, or for it to shine through. So everything really starts with you. And it makes a ton of sense to really spend time understanding where you thrive and where you perform really, really well. what are things that people come to you because you're just such a natural at it. There is this movie, Goodwill Hunting. I highly recommend watching it. There is this one scene where he's explaining to his girlfriend that maths just comes easy to him, organic chemistry. Like he gives the example of Beethoven, and if you put Beethoven on a piano, he doesn't need lessons. He knows what to do with it. Something in him knows, and he can just play. The same thing he described for himself. And trust me, it's not that there is 1% special set of people who have these specific skills or who have genius talent. I believe everyone is born with it. It's not about having, not having, it's about recognizing, not recognizing. It's about nurturing and not nurturing. So when you start recognizing what you're really, really naturally good at, and you start nurturing what you're really, really good at, that's how you start unlocking your full potential. Because what else is potential? It is talent, right? Natural talent that you were born with. So, which you didn't have to hustle for, you didn't have to earn, you had it always. So, why would you abandon that to operate in what I call the zone of grit, the zone of struggle, where you're always just trying to get better and failing? Okay, the fourth one is career injuries. I think all of us, with when you've been in the corporate world for about 10, 15 years, or you've been in any kind of career, I think we've all had bad experiences, negative experiences, things that didn't go so well, things that we thought are where we failed. Maybe we had some people betray us, maybe we had some people criticize us. We've all had those experiences. What we don't realize is that these our body perceives them as trauma because they do hurt us that much emotionally. And if your body is perceived something as trauma, it's going to create rules for you wherein to avoid experiencing this pain all over again. So if you had, and the easiest way to find that out, like, do you have this kind of trauma, is look back at your old experiences, and if you still feel some kind of emotional charge where it doesn't feel nice in your body, it should. I'm not saying it should feel nice looking back. You should be feeling ideally neutral towards things because if you've really genuinely processed it, you've learned your lessons, and you've overcome the pain, you would be feeling neutral around those things. You'd be able to talk about it easily without getting overwhelmed with emotion. But if that's not happening, that's a sign that you are carrying old career injuries and wounds. And while it's not like you're actively thinking about it every single day, but it'll show up in these very sneaky subconscious ways. For example, if you start to you get a new manager. The new manager reminds you of an old manager who was not good to you. Even before you've interacted with this person or had a chance to build rapport, your body is going to go into protective zone where you're going to find it really hard to build rapport with this person. And guess what? It's going to repeat. The pattern's going to repeat. Or it could be that you started a business, it kind of failed, it didn't work out, you came back, now you want to start a business again, and now again all of those old experiences coming back to haunt you, where you're like, look, that happened, you tried it before, it didn't work out, it's not worth it, don't go down that path, danger, danger, abort, abort. We have so many of these experiences on a day-to-day basis where our body is going danger, danger, abort, abort. Could be as simple as just reaching out to a senior or reaching out to a colleague because we need some support or we need them to help us with something, but it feels really difficult and there's no logical reason to feeling difficult, but you're having these experiences. Another sign is when you see a reaction that you had and it is disproportionate to the situation that you're finding yourself in, it means that there is something from your past which is kind of casting a shadow, and it's showing you what you're meant to heal next. So whether you do it in therapy, you do it in coaching, I've done a lot. Like for me, therapy hasn't worked. For me, coaching has worked beautifully. Inner child work has worked beautifully. EFT has worked beautifully, and that's where I have sat down and really processed some of the stuff so that I can move beyond it and I can unlock my full potential. The last one is, I used to think it makes sense when you think about vision, values, and purpose, but it's only when I got in alignment is when I realized, oh my God, how different this actually feels. Because I remember when I landed a job at Coca-Cola, it was a big relief. Like, it really felt like a dream job on paper. But I remember Googling how to live a good life because there was something in me which was craving for something more. Some part of me knew that this is not our destination, this is not where we are meant to be, and we are meant to be doing something else. Eventually, 3 4 years down the line, I would find my kind of mojo, the thing that I really like, and now it feels like a calling. But you've got to understand that your spiritual purpose, or forget spiritual purpose if it feels like too much for you and it feels like, what is that intuition down road that's going to come to me like a cupid striking, and that's kind of not how it happens. But I think something that is a very practical, pragmatic way to look at it is your career empowering the lifestyle that you want, the kind of life you want? Small example. If you're someone who's working with clients who are in the US, chances are your evenings go into calls and you don't ever get to see the sunset. So, or you're sleeping really late. But if that's not the lifestyle that you want, when you shift that lifestyle away from that, and when you create a job or a career situation where you get to have your evenings, you get to connect with your friends and family in the evenings, you everything else remaining the same, your level of satisfaction goes up. And because your level of satisfaction goes up, you're feeling happier and more satisfied. You're going to be a lot more creative. You're going to be doing a whole lot better because you cannot pour from an empty cup. This is a sign that you're being nurtured, your soul is feeling nurtured, and that's why it has more to give others. And my final piece of advice or my philosophy around this is that everyone should aspire to get paid to be themselves, because there's nothing better than that. And I feel so fortunate that I landed that opportunity, that I created this business where I get to be me, do things that I really love doing, and get paid for it. So, for example, signing up for these programs or spiritual stuff, all of this used to feel like it's a distraction away from my career. And it's a luxury that I have to allow myself and budget for. But now that I do this work, all of the spiritual stuff, all of the mindset stuff, all of the personal growth programs, everything is now aligning, and everything has an ROI because everything that I have as a lived experience serves my clients in so many ways. They learn from the experiences that I have had, and I'm able to mentor them better, and I'm able to offer them more and more tools because I am doing these things for myself. So, or just showing up to a talk like this, or showing up to a coaching session, or showing up to write content, none of that feels heavy. It's, yes, it's, I put in the hours and I put in the work, but that none of it feels heavy because it's just stuff that I would anyway do with my time. Okay. So the overall philosophy, I don't know if you picked up on this, but if there was just one takeaway from this entire talk, is alignment and flow. That's the key to unlocking your full potential. It's the difference between trying to swim against the tide to or swimming with the tide, with the current, letting the river kind of flow flow and take you with it. And that's where the alignment pieces kind of come in, where you start working on your safety, you start working on your environment that works for you, you start operating in the zone of genius, the way your brain was designed, or things that come easy for you. It's like you're a machine, maybe like you were designed for something, and you're finally using it for the stuff that you were designed, or and you're taking care of it according to the user manual that you came with, or you're kind of nourishing it and making it better according to the design that you had. So it's about it really starts with you, and the more and more time and energy you focus on getting to know yourself better and being better to yourself, that much more potential you're able to unlock for yourself. Okay. Yeah, I think a better analogy would be a plant. If you gave it the environment that it needs, if it likes humidity, you give it humidity. If it likes cocoa oil, you give it cocoa oil. If it likes less water, you give it less water. If it likes more water, you give it more water. So it's all of that combined, and that's what makes it bloom and fructify, right? It's really about giving it the nourishment and putting it in purpose for things that it was really designed for. So if you enjoyed this podcast and this conversation, I'm inviting you to join my newsletter. It's at limitlesswithmansi.com/newsletter. You get drops of these weekly talks and weekly emails. Also, if you feel called to work with me, just DM me and we can book a free consultation and get you going on track to unlock your full potential. This is the Rich, Free, and Limitless podcast, and this is where we have all these amazing conversations about the mid career crisis and how to realign your life and how to start the next chapter of your career that feels successful, not just looks successful on paper.